The evening air hit Maya Chen's face as she stepped through the sliding doors of JFK International Airport. After 20 hours trapped in recycled airplane air, even New York's mix of exhaust fumes and late spring humidity felt refreshing. She rolled her shoulders back, trying to work out the stiffness from the long flight from Singapore, and pulled her carry-on bag closer as travelers rushed past her in all directions. Maya checked her watch. 7:42 p.m. She'd made good time through customs despite the airport being packed with summer travelers. If she could grab a taxi quickly, she might even have time to shower at the hotel before meeting up with her research colleague for a late dinner. Just need to get through one more line, she whispered to herself, joining the queue for final passport checks. At 32, Maya had traveled enough to have her airport routine down to a science. Passport and customs declaration form in her right jacket pocket, phone and boarding pass stub in the left. She kept her eyes forward, staying alert despite the bone-deep tiredness that came with crossing too many time zones. The line moved steadily. Just 2 people ahead of her now. Maya felt her phone buzz in her pocket, probably Dr. Patel checking if her flight had landed on time. They were presenting their research on emergency medicine protocols at the conference tomorrow, and Lakshmi was always anxious about preparation. Maya smiled, thinking of her friend's careful planning. The phone buzzed again, but Maya decided to wait until she cleared this final checkpoint before responding. "Next," called the uniformed officer at the booth. Maya stepped forward, sliding her passport across the counter with a polite smile. The officer, a stocky man with a crew cut and a name tag reading Officer Walters, barely glanced at her before opening her passport. "Purpose of your visit to the United States?" he asked, flatly, eyes on the document rather than on Maya. "I'm here for the International Emergency Medicine Conference. I'm presenting research," Maya answered, keeping her voice even and professional. She'd answered this same question dozens of times on previous trips. Officer Walters looked up then, his eyes narrowing slightly as they settled on her face. "Research? What kind of research?" "Medical research. I'm a trauma specialist focusing on emergency response protocols," Maya replied, reaching into her bag. "I have my conference invitation here if you'd like to see it." "That won't be necessary." Officer Walters held up his hand to stop her, then turned to his computer screen, typing something Maya couldn't see. The seconds stretched into a minute, then 2. Maya shifted her weight from one foot to the other, aware of the growing line behind her. This wasn't normal. Usually, these final checks took seconds, not minutes. Had she said something wrong? "Is everything okay?" she asked carefully. Officer Walters didn't answer immediately. Instead, he picked up a phone beside his computer and spoke quietly into it, his eyes still on the screen. Maya caught fragments. "Need verification on a B1 visa. Conference attendee. Yes, Asian female, early 30s. Maya felt a flutter of unease in her stomach. She'd been to the U.S. multiple times for conferences without any issues. Her documents were in perfect order. She'd checked them meticulously before leaving Singapore. "Ms. Chen," Officer Walters finally said, looking up. "I'm going to need you to step aside. There appears to be an issue with your visa status." Maya blinked in surprise. "There must be some mistake. My visa was approved months ago." "Step aside, please," he repeated, more firmly this time. He gestured to a small waiting area to the right of the line. "Someone will be with you shortly." Confused but not wanting to create a scene, Maya nodded and moved to the waiting area. She pulled out her phone, finding 2 messages from Lakshmi asking about her arrival time. She quickly typed, "At airport. Small delay at customs. Will update. Soon." 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Maya watched as hundreds of travelers passed through the checkpoints without issue. She approached a different officer, a younger woman with a tight ponytail, who was directing travelers through the lines. "Excuse me," Maya said. "I've been waiting for someone to help me with the supposed visa issue, but no one has come. Could you check on the status?" The female officer, her tag read, Officer Rivera, looked uncomfortable. "Let me see what I can find out. Your name?" "Maya Chen." Officer Rivera stepped away to the main booth, spoke briefly with Officer Walters, then returned with a tight smile. "Someone will be with you very shortly, Ms. Chen. Please continue waiting." Another 15 minutes crawled by. Maya's initial confusion was turning to frustration. She'd planned to have time to settle in before tomorrow's presentation. Now she was stuck in airport limbo with no explanation. Finally, two new officers approached. A tall man with salt and pepper hair and a shorter, younger man with a prominent jaw. Neither smiled as they reached her. "Ms. Chen?" The older one spoke first. "I'm Officer Blackwood and this is Officer Donovan. We need you to come with us to clear up some questions about your entry status." Maya stood straighter, trying to project confidence despite her growing concern. "Can you tell me what the issue is with my visa? It was properly issued months ago." Officer Donovan cut in before his partner could answer. "We can discuss everything in private. This way, please." His tone made it clear this wasn't a request. Maya hesitated, then picked up her carry-on. "I have a connecting flight to catch," she lied, testing their response. "That won't be an issue," Officer Blackwood said smoothly. "This shouldn't take long." They led her away from the main terminal through a door marked "Authorized Personnel Only" and down a sterile hallway lined with unmarked doors. The airport noise faded with each step, replaced by the sound of their shoes against the linoleum floor. Officer Donovan opened a door halfway down the corridor, revealing a small room containing only a metal table and 3 chairs. No windows. No computer, just bare walls and fluorescent lighting that made Maya feel instantly claustrophobic. "Please have a seat," Officer Blackwood said, gesturing to the chair facing the door. Maya remained standing. "I'd like to know what this is about first, and I'd like to call my colleague who's waiting for me." Something flickered across Officer Donovan's face, annoyance perhaps before he controlled his expression. "Phones aren't allowed during questioning, standard procedure." "Questioning?" Maya repeated, her heart beating faster now. "I thought this was about my visa." "It is," Officer Blackwood said. "Among other concerns that have been flagged in our system, if you cooperate, we can get this cleared up quickly." Maya slowly sat down, placing her bag beside her chair. Both officers took seats across from her, creating an intentional barrier between Maya and the door. Officer Donovan pulled out a folder and opened it on the table. "You stated you're here for a medical conference," he began, not looking up from the papers. "Yes, the International Emergency Medicine Conference. It starts tomorrow at the Javits Center." "And you're from Singapore?" "Yes, I work at Singapore General Hospital. I've been there for 6 years." Officer Donovan made a note. "Before that?" Maya took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I did my medical training in London, and before that I grew up in both the US and Hong Kong. My father was in international business." "So you have ties to China?" Officer Donovan asked, his tone shifting subtly. Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. "Hong Kong isn't exactly—" She stopped herself, recognizing the trap. "My family lived in Hong Kong when I was a child. I haven't been back in over 15 years. Officer Blackwood leaned forward. "Ms. Chen, are you aware of the current restrictions on certain types of research being brought into the United States from countries of concern?" "I'm presenting medical research on emergency response protocols," Maya said carefully. "It's not classified or sensitive information. The conference has hundreds of international presenters." "Yet your name was flagged in our system." Officer Donovan cut in. "Can you think of any reason why?" Maya's mind raced. She had no criminal record, no political affiliations, nothing that should trigger any kind of security concern. "No, I can't. There must be some mistake." "We don't make mistakes," Officer Donovan said, his voice hardening. "Now, we'll need to examine your luggage and electronic devices." Maya's confusion was turning to alarm. Something wasn't right about this interrogation. "I'd like to speak with someone from the Singaporean embassy," she said firmly. "And I'd like to know exactly what I'm being accused of." "You're not being accused of anything yet," Officer Blackwood replied, emphasizing the last word in a way that made Maya's stomach tighten. but refusing to cooperate with customs and border protection officers can be grounds for denying entry. Maya looked between the two men, suddenly very aware of how isolated this room was from the main terminal. No one knew exactly where she was. Even Lakshmi only knew she was delayed at customs. "I'm not refusing to cooperate," Maya said carefully. "I just want to understand what's happening. This doesn't feel like standard procedure." Officer Donovan's jaw tightened. "What would you know about our standard procedures? This isn't Singapore. Ms. Chen." The way he said her name, with subtle emphasis on the foreign surname, wasn't lost on Maya. She'd encountered enough casual racism in her travels to recognize it, even when it was wrapped in official authority. Officer Blackwood shot his colleague a warning glance before turning back to Maya. "We have some specific questions about your research and connections. Answer truthfully, and this will go smoothly." He pulled out a form from the folder. "Let's start with a complete list of all the scientific and academic institutions you've been affiliated with in the past 10 years. As Maya began to answer, she made two decisions. First, to remain outwardly calm and cooperative, and second, to remember every detail of this encounter, because something told her this wasn't just about her visa, and whatever was happening here, in this small room hidden away from the busy airport, definitely wasn't right. An hour had passed since Maya first entered the small room. Her initial answers had only led to more questions, each one seeming less related to her visa status than the last. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the metal table. "Let's go through your travel history again," Officer Donovan said, tapping his pen against his notepad. The rhythmic sound echoed in the small space. "You visited Beijing in 2020? "No," Maya corrected for the third time. "I was in Taiwan in 2020 for a medical conference, not Beijing. I haven't been to mainland China since a family trip when I was 16. Officer Donovan exchanged a look with Officer Blackwood. "Our records indicate otherwise." Maya fought to keep her voice level. "Then your records are wrong. I can show you my passport stamps if you'd like." "We'll get to your passport," Officer Blackwood said. He leaned back in his chair, studying Maya with an unreadable expression. "Tell us about the research you're presenting tomorrow." Maya had already explained her work twice, but she took a deep breath and began again. "It's a new protocol for emergency responders dealing with mass casualty incidents. My team developed a triage system that improved survival rates by 22% in simulated disaster scenarios. And this research, does it involve any classified medical technology?" Officer Blackwood asked. Maya blinked in confusion. "No, it's a procedural methodology, not technology. It's about how emergency personnel make decisions under pressure. Everything in my presentation has already been published in medical journals." Officer Donovan scribbled something in his notes. "What about pharmaceutical compounds? Are you carrying any experimental drugs or chemical samples?" "What? No, of course not," Maya said, her confusion growing. "I'm a trauma doctor specializing in emergency protocols, not a pharmaceutical researcher." The questions continued to drift further from anything related to her visa or conference. They asked about her colleagues, her access to patient data, whether she had connections to various research facilities she'd never heard of. With each round of questioning, Maya became more certain that this wasn't standard procedure for anyone. "I need to use the bathroom," Maya finally said, interrupting Officer Donovan mid-question. The two officers exchanged another look. "We're not finished here," Officer Blackwood replied. "I've been answering your questions for over an hour," Maya said firmly. "I have a right to use the bathroom." After a pause, Officer Blackwood nodded. "Officer Donovan will escort you." Maya stood, her legs stiff from sitting so long. As she reached for her purse, Officer Donovan stopped her. "You can leave your belongings here," he said. Maya hesitated, then set her purse back down. "My phone's in there. I need to let my colleague know what's happening. She's waiting for me." "That won't be necessary," Officer Blackwood said. "This won't take much longer if you cooperate fully." Maya felt a flutter of panic at being separated from her phone, but nodded and followed Officer Donovan into the hallway. The bathroom was just 2 doors down, a single stall room with no windows. Officer Donovan unlocked it with a keycard. 3 minutes, he said, checking his watch. Inside, Maya splashed cold water on her face, trying to think clearly. This wasn't just unusual. It felt wrong. She'd traveled to dozens of countries, including multiple trips to the United States, and had never experienced anything like this. The questions weren't really about her visa or even her research. They seemed designed to trip her up, to make her say something they could use against her. In the mirror, Maya noticed her hair was coming loose from its neat bun, and dark circles had formed under her eyes. She looked exhausted and worried, because she was. But there was something else in her reflection too. Determination. She was a doctor who had worked in emergency rooms during crisis situations. She knew how to stay calm under pressure. 3 quick knocks on the door. "Time's up," Officer Donovan called. Maya dried her hands and stepped out. As they walked back to the interrogation room, she noticed a young woman in a customs uniform watching them from the end of the hallway. The woman quickly looked away when Maya made eye contact with her. Back in the room, Maya found Officer Blackwood going through her carry-on bag. "Excuse me," Maya said, stopping in the doorway. "Do you have a warrant to search my belongings?" Officer Blackwood didn't look up. "This is a border search. We don't need a warrant." Maya knew enough about legal rights to know there was some truth to that, but this still felt excessive. She watched as he removed her conference materials, her laptop, and finally, a small case containing her backup presentation USB drive. "What's on this?" he asked, holding up the USB drive. "Exactly what I told you, my presentation slides and research data." Officer Blackwood pocketed the drive. "We'll need to examine this." "That's my only backup," Maya protested. "I need it for tomorrow." "You'll get it back if everything checks out," Officer Donovan said, the implied threat clear in his voice. Maya sat down, her hands folded tightly in her lap to hide their slight trembling. "I want to speak with a supervisor," she said quietly but firmly. "And I want to call the Singaporean embassy. I've answered all your questions truthfully, and I don't understand why I'm being detained like this." "You're not being detained," Officer Blackwood said smoothly. "This is a routine secondary inspection." "There's nothing routine about this," Maya countered. "You've held me for over an hour, separated me from my belongings, taken my presentation materials, and asked questions that have nothing to do with my visa status." Officer Donovan's face hardened. "You people always think you're special, don't you? Think the rules don't apply to you?" "You people?" Maya repeated, her eyebrows raising. "What exactly do you mean by that?" The room went very still. Officer Blackwood shot a warning glance at his partner, but Donovan didn't back down. "Foreign nationals who think they can just waltz into our country without proper scrutiny," he said, but his tone made it clear he meant something else entirely. Maya held his gaze. "I've complied with every proper procedure. My papers are in order. I'm here for a legitimate professional purpose. What else do you want from me?" "We'll ask the questions here," Officer Blackwood cut in, trying to regain control of the situation. He pulled out another form. "We need detailed information about your research funding sources." Maya didn't look at the form. "I want to speak with a supervisor now, please." "That's not going to happen," Officer Donovan said. "Not until we're satisfied with your answers." Maya took a deep breath. "Then I'd like to know your full names and badge numbers." This request visibly surprised both officers. Officer Blackwood recovered first. "Focusing on our identification won't help your situation, Ms. Chen. I have a right to know who's questioning me," Maya insisted, memorizing the badge numbers partially visible on their uniforms. "And I have a right to proper treatment under U.S. Customs regulations." Officer Donovan stood suddenly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Listen carefully. We can make this very easy or very difficult for you. Right now, we're just asking questions. But we have the authority to deny your entry into the United States, detain you pending further investigation, or even revoke your visa privileges altogether." Maya felt a chill run through her, but kept her face neutral. "On what grounds?" Security concerns, Officer Blackwood said vaguely. Your research focuses on emergency response to mass casualty events. That raises certain flags in our system. Maya stared at him in disbelief. My research is about saving lives during disasters. It's been peer-reviewed and published in international medical journals. There's nothing secret or suspicious about it. That's for us to determine, Officer Donovan said. He leaned forward, placing both hands on the table. Now, we can resolve this quickly if you just tell us who else has access to your research data. The implication finally clicked for Maya. They weren't just questioning her. They were fishing for something specific, something they could use to justify their treatment of her. This wasn't about her visa or even her research itself. This was about who she was. I want to speak with a supervisor, Maya repeated, her voice steady and clear. And I want it noted that I believe I'm being profiled based on my ethnicity. The accusation hung in the air between them. Officer Blackwood's expression didn't change, but Officer Donovan's face flushed with anger. That's a serious allegation, Officer Blackwood said coolly. So is detaining someone without cause, Maya replied. The door opened unexpectedly and all three turned to look. A younger customs officer, the same woman Maya had noticed in the hallway earlier, stood in the doorway. She looked uncomfortable. Excuse me, officers. There's a situation that needs your attention, she said, not quite meeting anyone's eyes. We're in the middle of something, Officer Donovan snapped. The young officer hesitated. It's urgent, sir. Supervisor's orders. Officer Blackwood studied her face for a moment, then nodded. We'll be right back, Ms. Chen. Don't move. He collected the folder of papers and followed Officer Donovan out of the room. As soon as the door closed, Maya let out a shaky breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The clock on the wall read 9:17 p.m. She'd been in this room for nearly an hour and a half now. Lakshmi would be worried sick. Maya looked around the bare room, noticing for the first time a small camera in the corner of the ceiling. Had someone been watching this whole time? And if so, why hadn't they intervened when the questioning had clearly gone beyond standard procedure? She considered her options. She could continue to cooperate and hope this would end soon. She could escalate her demands for a supervisor, or she could try something else entirely. Maya reached for her purse, which Officer Blackwood had left on the table after searching it. Her phone was still inside. They hadn't confiscated it yet. With trembling fingers, she pulled it out and quickly typed a message to Lakshmi. Detained at JFK Customs. Officers Blackwood and Donovan. No reason given. Please call Singapore Consulate. She hit send just as she heard footsteps approaching in the hallway. Maya slipped the phone back into her purse seconds before the door opened again, but it wasn't Officers Blackwood and Donovan who entered. Instead, a woman in a different uniform stepped into the room. She had short gray hair and a stern expression that softened slightly when she saw Maya. Ms. Chen, I'm Chief Supervisor Hernandez, she said, closing the door behind her. I think we need to have a conversation about what's been happening here tonight. Chief Supervisor Hernandez placed a folder on the table and took the seat across from Maya. Unlike Officers Blackwood and Donovan, she made direct eye contact, her expression professional but not unkind. First, let me apologize for the delay in your entry process, she said, her voice carrying a slight accent that Maya couldn't quite place. I understand you've been here for nearly 2 hours now. Maya nodded cautiously. Yes, and I still don't understand why. That's what I'd like to clarify. Supervisor Hernandez opened the folder in front of her. I've reviewed the initial report, and I have some concerns about the handling of your case. But before we discuss that, I need to ask, has anyone informed you of your rights during this process? No, Maya said, surprised by the question. Officers Blackwood and Donovan just said this was a routine inspection that didn't require a warrant. Supervisor Hernandez's lips thinned slightly. While customs officers do have certain authorities at border crossings, those powers are not unlimited. You should have been informed that you have the right to know why you're being questioned, the right to legal representation if detained, and the right to contact your consulate. Maya felt a small surge of hope at this change in tone. I asked to call the Singaporean embassy multiple times. They refused. The supervisor made a note. I see. And can you tell me your understanding of why you were selected for additional screening? Maya straightened in her chair. Initially, Officer Walters claimed there was an issue with my visa. But the questions quickly shifted to my research, my travels to China, which I haven't visited in years, and suggestions that my work might involve classified technology or materials. None of that is true. And at any point, did either officer make comments about your ethnicity or nationality that made you uncomfortable? Maya hesitated, remembering Officer Donovan's "you people" comment. Yes. Officer Donovan made several remarks that suggested my treatment was related to my Chinese heritage, though he was careful not to say it directly. Supervisor Hernandez nodded as if this confirmed something. Ms. Chen, I want to be transparent with you. Officer Garcia, the young woman who interrupted your questioning, came to me with concerns about your case. She observed behaviors that didn't align with our protocols. Maya felt a rush of gratitude toward the young officer who had noticed something wrong. When I reviewed the surveillance footage from this room, Supervisor Hernandez continued, I saw several procedural violations. I've temporarily reassigned Officers Blackwood and Donovan pending a review. So there was never any actual issue with my visa? Maya asked. Supervisor Hernandez shook her head. Your documentation is in perfect order. Your visa is valid, your ST approval is current, and your conference registration checks out. There was no legitimate reason for extended questioning. Then why was I flagged in the first place? Maya asked, still confused. The supervisor hesitated, seeming to choose her words carefully. Our system uses certain algorithms to flag travelers for additional screening. Sometimes these algorithms pick up patterns that require human verification. Unfortunately, these systems can reflect historical biases. You mean racial profiling? Maya said quietly. I cannot comment on specific security protocols, Supervisor Hernandez replied diplomatically. But what I can say is that how Officer Zhao, Blackwood and Donovan chose to handle your case was inappropriate and will be thoroughly investigated. She closed the folder and looked directly at Maya. Ms. Chen, on behalf of U.S. Customs and Border Protection, I apologize for your experience today. You're free to enter the United States, and will expedite your processing immediately. What about my USB drive and laptop? Maya asked, remembering the items Officer Blackwood had taken. They'll be returned to you immediately, untampered with, the supervisor assured her. I'd also like to offer you my card. If you experience any further issues during your stay, or if you wish to file a formal complaint about your treatment today, please contact me directly. Maya took the business card, still processing this sudden shift. After nearly 2 hours of feeling powerless, the change felt almost dizzying. Thank you, she said finally. But I'd like to understand what happens now. Will there be any record of this incident that could affect my future travel? That's a valid concern, Supervisor Hernandez acknowledged. I'll personally ensure that no adverse notations are placed in your travel record. This incident will be documented, but as a case of improper officer conduct, not as a security concern about you. A knock at the door interrupted them. Officer Garcia entered carrying Maya's laptop and USB drive. Your belongings, ma'am, she said, placing them on the table. She glanced nervously at Supervisor Hernandez, who gave her a reassuring nod. Maya looked at the young officer, realizing this was the woman who had essentially rescued her. Thank you, she said, trying to convey her deep gratitude in those 2 simple words. Officer Garcia gave a small smile before leaving the room. She showed considerable courage, Supervisor Hernandez remarked once the door closed. Junior officers don't typically question the actions of their superiors. I'm grateful she did, Maya said. She gathered her belongings, feeling the weight of her phone in her purse. I should call my colleague. She's probably worried sick by now. Of course. I'll escort you to the main terminal, and you can make your call from there. Supervisor Hernandez stood. Again, Ms. Chen, I deeply regret what happened here today. As they walked through the hallway, Maya noticed other officers watching them curiously. News traveled fast, it seemed. She wondered how many incidents like hers had gone unreported, how many travelers had been intimidated into silence. In the main terminal, the bright lights and noise of the airport felt jarring after the isolated interrogation room. Maya checked her phone and found 6 missed calls and a dozen increasingly worried messages from Lakshmi. "Thank you for your help," Maya said to Supervisor Hernandez, who had waited discreetly while she checked her phone. "It's my job," the supervisor replied simply. "If you decide to file a formal complaint, don't hesitate to contact me. Your testimony could help prevent similar incidents in the future." With that, Supervisor Hernandez nodded respectfully and walked away, leaving Maya standing. In the bustling terminal with her luggage and racing thoughts, Maya called Lakshmi immediately. "I'm so sorry for worrying you," she said when her friend answered on the first ring. "Maya, thank goodness. I was about to call the embassy myself. What happened?" Lakshmi's voice was thick with concern. "It's a long story." Maya sighed, watching travelers stream past her, most completely unaware of what had transpired in those hidden rooms. "I'll tell you everything when I get to the hotel." After hanging up, Maya stood still for a moment, letting the reality of what had happened sink in. Her hands were still shaking slightly, but her mind was clear. What she had experienced wasn't just a personal injustice. It was part of a larger pattern, one that affected countless others who might not have had a Supervisor Hernandez or an Officer Garcia to intervene. Maya hailed a taxi outside the terminal, giving the driver the address of her hotel. As the car pulled away from the curb, she looked back at the airport, its windows glowing against the night sky. The building looked so ordinary from the outside, giving no hint of what happened within its walls. During the ride to Manhattan, Maya replayed every moment of her detention, committing details to memory: the officers' badge numbers, their specific questions, the exact wording of their comments. Being a doctor had taught her the importance of accurate documentation. If she decided to file a complaint, she wanted her account to be precise and thorough. The taxi driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "First time in New York?" he asked conversationally. "No," Maya replied. "I've been here several times before." "For work or pleasure?" "Work. I'm speaking at a medical conference tomorrow." Maya paused, then added, "I'm a trauma doctor specializing in emergency response protocols." "No kidding, that sounds important," the driver said, sounding genuinely impressed. "It is important," Maya said, a new resolve strengthening her voice. "It's about making sure people get the help they need in crisis situations, about making sure systems work the way they're supposed to." The taxi turned onto the brightly lit avenue where her hotel was located. Maya looked out at the city streets, bustling with life even at this late hour. She thought about her presentation tomorrow, about the months of research, the careful documentation, the rigorous peer review process that had validated her findings. She also thought about Officer Garcia, who had risked her position to report misconduct, and Supervisor Hernandez, who had taken those concerns seriously instead of dismissing them. Even in flawed systems, there were people trying to do the right thing. By the time the taxi pulled up to her hotel, Maya had made a decision. She would deliver her presentation tomorrow exactly as planned. She would share her research on improving emergency response systems with her colleagues from around the world, and then she would use Supervisor Hernandez's card to file a formal complaint, not just for herself, but for everyone who had faced similar treatment without the resources or support to challenge it. As she paid the driver and collected her luggage, Maya's phone buzzed with a new message from Lakshmi. "Just checking you're really okay. Room service and tea waiting for you when you get here." Maya smiled for the first time since stepping off the plane. "On my way up," she typed back. "And I have quite a story to tell you." She entered the hotel lobby, exhaustion and determination mingling as she headed for the elevators. Tomorrow would be a new day with its own challenges. But tonight she had learned something important. Sometimes the most effective resistance was simply refusing to stay silent. Maya's presentation the next morning went better than she could have hoped, especially considering the night she'd had. Running on just 4 hours of sleep and extra strong coffee, she stood confidently before a packed conference room of medical professionals from around the world. In emergency situations, every second counts, she concluded, gesturing to her final slide showing the improved survival statistics. By implementing this triage protocol, we've seen a 22% increase in positive outcomes during the first critical hour. Thank you. The audience applauded enthusiastically. As people approached with questions afterward, Maya noticed a tall woman in a dark blue suit, waiting patiently at the edge of the group. There was something official about her posture that reminded Maya of Supervisor Hernandez. When the crowd finally thinned, the woman approached. Dr. Chen, I'm Diane Powell from the Department of Homeland Security's Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties. She offered a business card. Do you have a moment to talk? Maya's heart skipped. How did you know to find me here? Supervisor Hernandez contacted our office this morning about what happened at JFK yesterday. Diane spoke quietly, mindful of the few lingering conference attendees. She was quite concerned about the conduct of her officers. Maya glanced at Lakshmi, who was packing up the presentation materials nearby. My colleague knows what happened. Is it okay if she joins us? Of course, Diane agreed. They found a quiet corner in the conference center's cafe. After ordering coffee, Diane got straight to the point. Dr. Chen, what happened to you yesterday shouldn't have happened. Supervisor Hernandez did the right thing by stepping in. But I'm here because we believe this may not be an isolated incident. Maya set down her coffee cup. What do you mean? We've received several complaints over the past few months about similar treatment of Asian travelers, particularly those in scientific or medical fields, Diane explained. Most didn't have someone like Officer Garcia to speak up for them. So, you think Officers Blackwood and Donovan have done this before? Lakshmi asked, her voice tight with anger on her friend's behalf. We're investigating that possibility, Diane confirmed. Which is why I wanted to speak with you, Dr. Chen. Your testimony could be crucial. Maya felt a mix of emotions. Vindication that her suspicions about profiling were being taken seriously, but also uneasiness about getting involved in what would clearly become a larger investigation. What exactly would you need from me? She asked cautiously. A formal statement for starters, and potentially down the line testimony if this leads to administrative proceedings or even criminal charges. Criminal charges? Maya repeated, surprised. For questioning me? Diane's expression turned serious. For civil rights violations, abuse of authority, and possibly falsification of government records. If we find evidence that officers have been systematically targeting travelers based on race or national origin, and fabricating security concerns to justify it, that goes well beyond improper questioning. Maya thought about her interrupted flight, her confiscated property, the subtle and not-so-subtle intimidation tactics. She thought about Officer Donovan's "you people" comment and Officer Blackwood's vague accusations about security concerns. I want to help, Maya said finally. But I live in Singapore. I'm flying back in 3 days. We can take your initial statement before you leave, Diane assured her. After that, most communication can happen remotely, and if we do need you to testify in person, the department would cover your travel expenses. Lakshmi leaned forward. Maya, you should do this. What they did to you was wrong, and who knows how many others have been treated the same way. Maya nodded slowly. All right. When do we start? I have the paperwork with me, Diane said, pulling a folder from her briefcase. We can do this right now if you're comfortable. For the next hour, Maya recounted every detail of her detention, the initial flagging by Officer Walters, the questioning by Officers Blackwood and Donovan, the comments about her ethnicity, the confiscation of her belongings, and finally the intervention by Officer Garcia and Supervisor Hernandez. Diane recorded the conversation and took extensive notes, occasionally asking Maya to clarify specific points or exact wording. When they finished, Maya signed a formal statement. What happens now? She asked as Diane carefully filed the papers. We'll continue our investigation, interview the officers involved, and review surveillance footage. We'll also look for patterns in other cases. This may take some time, but we'll... keep you updated on any significant developments. After Diane left, Maya and Lakshmi walked back to their hotel in thoughtful silence. The bright September sunshine and busy New York streets felt worlds away from the sterile interrogation room of yesterday. "Are you okay?" Lakshmi finally asked as they waited at a crosswalk. "I think so," Maya said. "It feels good to know something might actually be done about this, but also..." "What?" "I keep thinking about the people who don't have someone like Supervisor Hernandez step in, or who don't get a visit from someone like Diane Powell. What happens to them?" Lakshmi squeezed her friend's arm. "That's why what you're doing matters." 2 days later, the day before her flight back to Singapore, Maya's phone rang with an unknown number. "Dr. Chen, this is Officer Garcia from JFK Customs." The young woman's voice sounded nervous. "I hope it's okay that I called. Supervisor Hernandez gave me your number." "Of course," Maya said, surprised. "Is everything all right?" "Yes, well, sort of." Officer Garcia hesitated. "I wanted you to know that Internal Affairs came today. They're reviewing all of Blackwood and Donovan's cases from the past 6 months, and they've been questioning other officers too, asking if we've witnessed similar incidents." "That sounds promising," Maya said carefully, aware that this call might be uncomfortable for the young officer. "It's more than that," Garcia continued, lowering her voice. "They found a pattern. At least 7 other travelers with similar backgrounds to yours, Asian professionals in scientific fields, all subjected to extended questioning with no valid security concerns." Maya sat down on the edge of the hotel bed, her legs suddenly weak. 7 that they know of. Exactly. And there's something else. Officer Blackwood's personal phone was seized as evidence. Apparently there were text messages between him and Officer Donovan about targeting certain travelers. "I see," Maya said quietly, the confirmation of what she'd suspected sending a chill through her. I wanted you to know that speaking up made a difference," Officer Garcia said. "It's not easy being the one to report colleagues, but seeing what they did to you and others, it wasn't right. You showed real courage," Maya told her sincerely. "Thank you for that." After they hung up, Maya called Diane Powell to relay what she'd learned. The DHS investigator wasn't surprised. "The investigation is moving quickly," Diane confirmed. "We've already placed both officers on administrative leave. I can't share all the details yet, but I will say your testimony was incredibly helpful in connecting the dots." That evening, Maya received an email from Supervisor Hernandez, containing a formal letter of apology from U.S. Customs and Border Protection regarding her treatment at JFK Airport. The letter acknowledged that the additional screening had been unwarranted and assured her that measures were being taken to prevent similar incidents in the future. It was a small victory, but meaningful nonetheless. On her last night in New York, Maya met Lakshmi for dinner at a small restaurant near their hotel. As they waited for their food, Lakshmi raised her glass in a toast. "To making a difference," she said. Maya clinked her glass against her friend's. "To speaking up," she added. "So what happens when you get back to Singapore?" Lakshmi asked. "Will you stay involved with the investigation?" Maya nodded. "As much as I can from overseas. Diane says they might need me to testify via video conference if the case goes to an administrative hearing. And are you okay with that?" "It could take months." "I am," Maya said with quiet determination. "You know, when I was in that room with Blackwood and Donovan, the worst part wasn't the inconvenience or even the accusations. It was feeling powerless, like I had no voice, no rights." She looked out the restaurant window at the people passing by on the sidewalk, each absorbed in their own lives, their own journeys. "I keep thinking about something my father used to say. He grew up during a time when speaking out against authority was dangerous. He always told me that in places where freedom exists, we have a responsibility to protect it, not just for ourselves, but for everyone." Lakshmi smiled. "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He was," Maya agreed. "And I think he would be proud of what's happening now. Not just that I'm standing up for myself, but that people within the system, People like Officer Garcia and Supervisor Hernandez are standing up too. Their food arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. As they ate, Maya found herself feeling more at peace than she had since stepping off the plane 4 days ago. What had begun as a frightening and isolating experience had revealed something important. Systems might be flawed, but the people within them still had the power to choose justice over convenience, courage over conformity. You know, Lakshmi said as they finished their meal, your work on emergency response protocols is about creating better systems, ones that save more lives in crisis situations. Maybe this isn't so different. Maya considered this. I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're right. Sometimes it takes a crisis to show us where the systems are broken. As they walked back to their hotel under the glow of city lights, Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. Tomorrow she would board her flight back to Singapore, back to her regular life of hospital rounds and research. But she would carry with her the knowledge that speaking truth to power wasn't just a noble ideal. It was a necessary action that could create real change, one brave voice at a time. 6 months had passed since Maya's detention at JFK Airport. Life in Singapore had returned to its familiar rhythm: hospital rounds, research, meetings, and the occasional dinner with friends. But every few weeks, an email from Diane Powell would arrive, updating her on the investigation's progress. Latest message had been different, marked urgent in the subject line. Maya read it during her lunch break, nearly spilling her tea when she reached the final paragraph. The Department of Justice has decided to pursue criminal charges against Officers Blackwood and Donovan. We need you to testify in person at the SEER Federal Courthouse in New York. I know this is a significant request, but your testimony is crucial to the case. That night, Maya sat on her apartment balcony, watching Singapore's skyline glitter against the dark sky as she considered her options. She could testify via video conference. Diane had offered this as an alternative, but something told her that this moment required her physical presence. The next morning, she requested 2 weeks' leave from the hospital, booked a flight to New York, and replied to Diane, "I'll be there." 3 weeks later, Maya found herself back in New York City, this time in early spring. Cherry blossoms dotted the parks, and a gentle warmth had replaced winter's chill. But Maya barely noticed the pleasant weather as she made her way up the courthouse steps, her heart pounding. Diane met her at the security checkpoint dressed in a crisp navy suit. "Thank you for coming all this way," she said, guiding Maya through the metal detectors. "There have been some developments you should know about before we go in." In a quiet conference room, Diane explained the situation. The investigation uncovered far more than we initially expected. Officers Blackwood and Donovan weren't just randomly targeting Asian travelers. They were part of an unofficial group within JFK Customs that called themselves the Gatekeepers. Gatekeepers? Maya repeated, the ominous name sending a chill through her. They saw themselves as protecting America from what they perceived as foreign threats. They specifically targeted scientists, researchers, and medical professionals of Asian descent, operating on the prejudiced belief that these travelers might be stealing American intellectual property or conducting espionage. Maya shook her head in disbelief. "That's absurd. I'm a doctor working on emergency response protocols. There was nothing classified or sensitive about my research." Exactly. None of the people they detained were involved in anything remotely suspicious. It was pure racial profiling dressed up as national security concerns. Diane opened a folder on the table. In total, we've identified 23 cases over the past year that fit the pattern. 23? Maya felt slightly dizzy. And how many of these people have come forward? Including you? 11. Many were too afraid of jeopardizing their visa status or future travel to the U.S. Others simply wanted to put the experience behind them. Diane looked at Maya with genuine gratitude. That's why your testimony is so important. You're one of the few willing to speak publicly about what happened. Maya nodded slowly, understanding the weight of responsibility. What exactly will I need to do? Today is a preliminary hearing to determine if there's enough evidence to proceed with a full trial. You'll need to recount your experience under oath, just as you did in your statement. The defense attorneys for Blackwood and Donovan will likely try to challenge your recollection or suggest that there were legitimate security concerns that justified their actions. And Officer Garcia, will she be testifying too? Yes, along with Supervisor Hernandez and several other customs officials who witnessed similar incidents. Diane checked her watch. We should head to the courtroom soon. But first, are you sure you're ready for this? Once you testify publicly, this becomes part of the permanent record. Maya thought about the 23 people who had been profiled, the 11 who had found the courage to come forward, and the unknown number who might face similar treatment in the future if nothing changed. I'm ready, she said firmly. The courtroom was smaller than Maya had imagined, with dark wood paneling and American flags flanking the judge's bench. She spotted Officers Blackwood and Donovan sitting with their attorneys, both men wearing suits instead of uniforms. They looked smaller somehow, less intimidating than they had in that interrogation room. When Maya's name was called to testify, she walked steadily to the witness stand, took her oath, and faced the prosecutor, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Dr. Chen, please tell the court about your arrival at JFK Airport on September 15th of last year, the prosecutor began. Maya spoke clearly, describing each step of her detention, from Officer Walter's initial claim about her visa to Officer Z. Blackwood and Donovan's increasingly hostile questioning. She detailed the comments about her ethnicity, the confiscation of her belongings, and the vague accusations about security concerns. And at any point during this questioning, did either officer explain what specific security threat you supposedly posed? The prosecutor asked. No, Maya replied. When I asked directly, they only made vague references to my research and suggested that because it involved emergency response to mass casualty events, it raised certain flags. But my work is published in international medical journals. There was nothing secretive or sensitive about it. When it was the defense's turn, Blackwood and Donovan's attorney, a sharp-featured man with silver hair, approached with a confident stride. Dr. Chen, isn't it true that customs officers have a duty to protect our borders from all potential threats? Yes, I believe they do, Maya answered carefully. And wouldn't you agree that in today's complex world, those threats aren't always obvious? That sometimes deeper questioning is necessary? Maya didn't take the bait. I agree that appropriate questioning can be necessary. What I experienced went far beyond appropriate. The attorney changed tactics. Dr. Chen, how many times have you entered the United States prior to this incident? 7 or 8 times for various medical conferences. And in those previous visits, were you ever selected for additional screening? Once, briefly. It lasted about 10 minutes and involved checking my luggage. It was nothing like what happened this time. So you acknowledge that additional screening does happen routinely? Routine screening, yes. Being taken to an isolated room, questioned about my ethnicity, and having my property confiscated without cause is not routine, Maya replied firmly. The attorney pressed on for another 20 minutes, trying to suggest that Maya had misinterpreted the officer's comments or that she had somehow triggered legitimate security concerns. But Maya remained composed, answering each question directly without becoming defensive. When she was finally dismissed from the witness stand, Maya felt exhausted but relieved. She had done what she came to do, told her truth clearly and without embellishment. Outside the courtroom during a recess, she spotted Officer Garcia waiting to testify. The young woman looked nervous but determined. When she saw Maya, she approached hesitantly. Dr. Chen, I just wanted to say thank you for coming all this way to testify. I should be thanking you, Maya replied sincerely. If you hadn't spoken up that day, I might still be in that room. Officer Garcia smiled slightly. I was terrified, honestly. Reporting senior officers isn't exactly a career-advancing move, but after I saw how they treated you, she shook her head. I couldn't just look the other way. That took real courage, Maya told her. You know, after this all started, other officers began coming forward too. People who had seen things but been afraid to say anything. It's like once one person spoke up, it gave others permission to do the same. Maya thought about this as she returned to the courtroom for the remainder of the hearing. One voice, then another, then more, each person choosing to stand for what was right rather than what was easy. 3 days later, the judge ruled that there was sufficient evidence for the case to proceed to trial. Officers Blackwood and Donovan would face federal charges for civil rights violations, abuse of authority, and falsification of government records. On her last evening in New York, Maya met Diane for dinner at a small restaurant overlooking Central Park. The trees were just beginning to bud with the promise of spring. The trial won't start for several months, Diane explained as they ate. But the investigation has already led to significant changes at JFK and other ports of entry. New oversight protocols, mandatory body cameras that cannot be turned off, additional training on implicit bias. Will it be enough? Maya wondered aloud. It's a start, Diane replied. Systems don't change overnight. But what happened with the gatekeepers has forced CBP to acknowledge that the problem wasn't just a few bad officers. It was a culture that allowed their behavior to go unchecked. Maya nodded, thinking about her own work in emergency medicine. In my field, we talk about creating a just culture, where people feel safe reporting errors and near misses because the goal isn't to punish individuals but to improve the system. Exactly, Diane agreed. And sometimes it takes a case like yours to shine a light on where the system is failing. As they finished their meal, Diane handed Maya an envelope. This came to our office yesterday. Supervisor Hernandez thought you should see it. Inside was a letter from a young woman named Lynn, a biomedical researcher from Taiwan. She wrote that she had been detained at JFK 3 months before Maya, subjected to similar questioning by officers Blackwood and Donovan. She had been too frightened to report it at the time, worried about jeopardizing her research position in the U.S. But after reading about Maya's testimony in the news, she had found the courage to come forward with her own story. Your bravery made this possible, Lynn had written. You helped me find my voice. Maya carefully folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope, deeply moved by this connection with someone who had walked a similar path. The next morning, as her plane lifted off from JFK Airport, the same airport where her ordeal had begun, Maya looked down at the sprawling city below. So much had changed in 6 months, both in the systems she had challenged and within herself. She thought about Officer Garcia, who had risked her career to speak up, about Supervisor Hernandez, who had chosen accountability over looking the other way, about Lynn and the others who had found the courage to tell their stories, and about all the travelers who would never know that their journey through that airport might be a little more just because of what had happened here. As the plane banked toward home, Maya opened her laptop to review notes for a new research project, an expansion of her emergency response protocols to include safeguards against bias in crisis decision-making. The work of creating better systems, she had realized, extended far beyond hospital walls. Justice wasn't just an outcome, to be achieved once and celebrated. It was an ongoing process sustained by individual acts of courage and the persistent belief that speaking truth to power mattered, not just for oneself, but for all those who would come after.